Thank you, Didert. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to see this big international audience here. This presentation is based on a policy brief that has been published on the website of the Odyssey MIR project, along a series of other policy briefs. So you can find the brief there. It was reviewed by Dr. Wolfgang Eichhammer from the Fraunhofer Institute, and he will make some remarks at the end of the presentation before the Q&A session, provided that there is enough time for that. So, to the topic, the contents of the presentation. First, I will make a small introduction to energy sufficiency, the definition and some general macro level information about it. Next, we will go to have a look at energy sufficiency indicators, as we can find them in the Odyssey database on energy indicators. Policies and measures will provide some general ideas about the different policy types that are available in some sectors. And we will also look at the contents in the MIR database on energy efficiency policies and measures, where we have now the possibility to mark certain measures as promoting energy sufficiency. And as the last topic, then some ideas about policy implications. So most of the materials are coming from the Odyssey MIR project, but there are also some other materials that I have put together here. The overconsumption day of national resources this year was on 29th of July, and it has not been affected much about the COVID crisis. And in Europe, it's even earlier. In Finland, it was in April. So we are using much more resources than there are on the planet. And energy efficiency is one way to address this, but it seems that the challenge is so big that we need also other approaches. And one of them could be energy sufficiency, which is in the ECEEE sufficiency project defined like this, that it's a state where people's basic needs are met equitably and ecological limits are respected. So we are talking about needs, not wants, because everybody wants a lot, but needs are a bit different. But at the same time, there's a very strong view with the overall ecological limits. And here we can see the energy sufficiency donut that was introduced in the sufficiency project. In the center, we can see different basic needs that people have, like shelter, health, mobility, communications, voice, democracy, work. And people need energy services. We need heating, we need, in some cases, cooling, we need mobility and so on, but we also have to respect the limits of the globe, which clearly are exceeded now. I move on to the next slide. What is the relationship between energy efficiency and energy sufficiency? Now, energy sufficiency and policies and measures to promote that are not totally new. We have seen the same measures to promote energy efficiency as well. But energy sufficiency tends to go a bit further. The mechanisms are a bit more, sometimes a bit more radical, or aiming at actual cut of consumption. While energy efficiency itself is more about improving different ratios and getting more output for a given input. And in terms of policy measures, there are some differences, although, as I said, there are some similarities. There are also some differences, because energy sufficiency can be also addressed by other policies than energy efficiency policies or energy policies. They can be in some other areas. Trying to change this slide, but for some reason this is stuck here. Okay, now we get forward. Some materials from outside the Odyssey Myr project. There was a quite recent meta-analysis of 18 different studies on energy sufficiency, and what are the levels where energy consumption no longer improves well-being. And in this study, it was discovered that the range was from 60 gigajoules per capita per year to 221 on TPS basis, and the mean value was 132, which is very close to the European average level. Then the same study referred to a Swiss policy example, where there is a target for 2000 watt society, and this corresponds to roughly 63 gigajoules per capita, and this can also already be considered as a very ambitious level, because it means about halving the current average European levels. But one more reference was being made to the United Nations Advisory Group on Energy and Climate Change. There, they mentioned that modern energy needs could perhaps be met through aggregate energy use around 37 gigajoules per capita on TPS basis, which is 26 in terms of final consumption, which is again very, very extreme. But this is macro level data, and it's macro level estimates, macro level studies, which are not quite enough to study the root causes of energy consumption and overconsumption. We need more detailed data on sectoral level and information on the different factors which contribute to the consumption levels. So in Odyssey database, we can find a great deal of sufficiency indicators per sector. And in household sector, in the database, we can find indicators like average floor area per person, or per dwelling, or per new dwelling. We can monitor the share of dwellings which are not permanently occupied. We can monitor the number of persons in permanently occupied dwellings, and the number of appliances per household. In the transport sector, we can monitor cars per person or per household, the mileage per person by different transport modes. So there's some data on modal splits and some data on car features. In the service sector, there is the floor area per employee and final consumption per employee or floor area, and electricity consumption per employee or floor area. The data is not complete for all countries, and unfortunately some very good indicators like the floor area per employee in offices, which would be a very good indicator. That data is not available for all countries, but for example households and transport, the data is at a better level. here we have one example of the different of the indicators there. We have the floor area per person in various countries. Not all countries are covered, but in Europe, but quite many. And we can see in the center the European average, which is about almost 40 square meters per person. And we have information which countries are above this and which countries are below this. And if we look at the growth of the average, the European average has grown by 16% since year 2000. We can play around a bit with numbers in the database. If we make a little calculation comparing the actual levels, let's say, for example, to floor area of 35 per person. So it means that 16 countries are above this level. This 35 is just a little bit below the European average. If we look at these 16 countries, we can see that the kind of a savings space could theoretically be about 3 billion square meters. And if we look at the implications to space heating, we can see that the theoretical energy savings in heating could be over 300 terawatt hours a year, which is about 16% of space heating consumption within the EU 28. This is, of course, very virtual calculation, and I'm not trying to say that 35 square meters per person would be the right number. And there's, of course, the question that what would happen with the extra space. But this is just to demonstrate how you can play around numbers in the Odyssey and make some quick estimates, what if estimates with the data. Now, similar data on the transport sector, car mileage per person. We can see here the European average again at the middle, like about 9,500 kilometers per person, and there are number of countries where the numbers are much higher and countries where the numbers are much lower. And it is not in this figure, but we can also compare this to the car ownership, that how many cars there are per person or per household. These numbers tend to somewhat correlate with this mileage, but not totally. We can find exceptions. We can find countries where there is a quite high ownership rates, but yet low mileage, and the other way around. Of course, these numbers depend a lot on the local circumstances, like how good is the public transport network, the size of the country, and that sort of things. So, but this gives some idea what things look like. And again, a little back of the envelope example calculation with the data, with the car mileage. So if we again compare to the European average and compare the actual numbers in the countries which exceed the European average, we could estimate that savings in mileage could be quite high, and corresponding energy savings would be about 18% consumption by cars. But again, I'm not making any remarks on how realistic this is. This is just to demonstrate the possibility to use the numbers and data in the database. Then to the policies and measures side, first I will show some policy options in different sectors, and next we will look at the MUR database, what is there about the sufficiency policies, and then a little what's the next session. Now, policy types in buildings. Some of these have been collected by colleagues in the Fraunhofer Institute, and then there have been some supplementary sources like the ECEEE Sufficiency Project. Now, there's a at least at the theoretical level, there's a possibility to cap somehow the use of space or guide towards smaller dwelling sizes. Then this is a kind of a restrictive regulatory measure, but a more facilitating measure would be to start thinking about, particularly in the new buildings, the flexible use of spaces and facilities, that what kinds of facilities or spaces could be in common usage, for example, and what should be within the apartments. Then there could be some requirements for heating and cooling control, automatization and control. In taxation, the property taxation could be used to steer towards sensible dwelling sizes. So it could be made progressive. Of course, there is the energy taxation as well, the taxation on energy and different energy forms. Then one idea is that in public housing, there could be a rent bonus for tenants if they change to smaller flats. Then there are the possibilities of shared economy, which is again kind of more popular than taxation or regulation, because these are more voluntary measures. We could encourage co-living and also try to shift these possible regulatory barriers which are there, which can somehow stop or make it more difficult to organize co-living. There can be, for example, difficulties in some social welfare payments, which can make this quite difficult. And then we can encourage rental of facilities instead of ownership, both in terms of space and as well as different equipment. In the public sector, there can be programs aiming at efficient use of space as part of the real estate management of public entities. And then there can be information measures addressing both procurement and habitual behavior of consumers. One of them are the European Building Energy Certificates, which tell about the features of the building. So when we look at the list, we can see that some of these measures are already used to some extent, but we could see more decisive effort in many areas. But what is encouraging is that we also see some initiatives from the consumers themselves, particularly in the area of shared economy and platform economy. In the transport sector, the list of the measures is very similar to the list of measures addressing energy efficiency. There are the taxation measures, taxation of fuels, taxation of cars, annual car taxes, and taxation of shared cars. Perhaps there could be something which could promote the use of shared cars. There are the pricing policies like road tolls, congestion fees, pricing of public transport, parking pricing, and internalization of transport externalities, which makes the costs more transparent. There can be subsidies, for example, to electric bikes if they replace cars, use of cars. There can be infrastructural measures which promote public transport or good cycling lanes. There can be parking policies, but also like countries where there are severe winters, wintertime maintenance is a very important matter in people's decisions to walk or cycle, or whether they will use their cars. Then urban planning is one area of policy where lots of different things can be done, and these decisions are very profound because they set the scheme for transport and construction and things like that. Then building codes, which come from the building sector, can be used here as well. In buildings, there could be some requirements for bicycle storage or e-bike charging and parking, or there could be possibilities for shared car services. Mobility management to promote shared or smart mobility services, promotion of teleworking. Well, since the COVID crisis, this has become quite common as well. But what happens after the COVID crisis? Then the digitalization of services that has a strong impact on mobility needs. Whether you need to go to somewhere to get the services you need, or whether you can get them online. And then there is the whole span of information measures addressing procurement and habitual behavior. One of them being, for example, vehicle labeling. Other policy types, there's eco-design of appliances and aero equipment. There could be, for example, advanced functionalities according to the usage patterns. Then there's legislation which could be used to forbid certain consumption, which is of course very difficult to implement, but should perhaps be taken under consideration. My personal favorite here would be patio heaters, because it's difficult to see the importance of heating outdoor air. And then looking into the future, personal carbon budget could be one measure, which is of course very difficult to implement so that it's socially fair. There are also technical questions, lots of policy questions, but there have been some experiments on this as well. Now to the MUR database. So this possibility to mark some measures in this policies and measures database as energy sufficiency measures has been there only since last spring. So the data is not quite complete yet, but in the next updates, I expect that we will have even better knowledge base on what measures are being implemented in different countries in this area. And here are some examples what we can find there now. There are much more measures in the transport sector, and much less measures in the building sector. There are, for example, national mobility management programs. A couple of examples here are from France and Germany, but there are these in other countries as well. And sometimes there are mobility management programs addressing the public sector, so the services sector, as in Portugal, but in other countries as well. There are measures on taxation of vehicles, and as well as fuel taxes, where the high level encourages more moderate usage. Examples: Denmark, Finland. There is the labeling of vehicles measure, which we have as EU-wide, but also Switzerland has one. There are some measures addressing modal shift, like Latvia, Finland. And in Italy, there was a very interesting early measure for subsidies to e-bikes in some islands which were very touristic, and so this was an alternative for using rental cars. In UK, there have been some boiler standards where there have been some requirements for time and temperature controls. In Finland, we had a program on reducing the office space per employee in public administration, because the average space was much higher than the average in Europe, and it was part of the real estate management of the state. In Poland, there is a program called the New Energy Program, which takes a more holistic approach by trying to add innovation at the systemic level. It will address plus energy buildings, smart cities, self-sufficient energy clusters, and provide a platform where energy efficiency and energy sufficiency can be promoted in the future. Then my last slide is here about what should happen next. First, we should fully recognize the potential of sufficiency measures in reaching sustainability goals. As said, they are partly visible in among the energy efficiency measures, but we need to raise their status in their own right. Countries are making their climate programs and energy strategies and so on, energy efficiency plans. In these different roadmaps, it's good to stop for a moment to think about what role could energy sufficiency play, whether there are some areas where also these measures could make a stronger contribution. There are, of course, lots of technical, social, legal challenges with some measures, and they will require thorough analysis. And we also need a very open public discussion about these measures, and they are not always very popular. One can imagine, particularly when we are talking about legislation or taxation. But there needs to be an open discussion about this as well, and not only in the margin. As I mentioned earlier, there is already some encouraging development, as we can see see that the platform economy and search services are growing, and this is happening with very minimum political influence. And it seems to be that attitudes and behavior are changing, but are they changing quickly enough? In France, ADEME carried out a survey about people's attitudes to policies, and it seemed to show some willingness to change. It was most difficult. It seemed to be most difficult in the transport sector, but in some other sectors, there was already quite encouraging signals there. So the policy brief can be found here on the Odyssey Mir website. And next, I welcome Wolfgang Eichhammer to give some remarks if you are online.
Yes, I'm online. I'm not sure whether I should switch on the video here. You have switched it off, I think. Is it correct?
Yeah, you can just keep your video off, Wolfgang, just to not to consume the bandwidth. But
Yeah,
indeed,
no
welcome, and great that you engaged already in the debate via the questions. I see that you answered some of them. So maybe to introduce you to the audience, Wolfgang Eichhammer is a professor, doctor, and head of the Competence Center, Energy Policy and Energy Markets at the Fraunhofer Institute. So nice to have you amongst us, Wolfgang, and please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Dieter, and thanks, Leah, also for this and a very nice presentation on this very interesting topic. I am one of the technical coordinators of the Odyssey Mir project, and together with Leah for many years, we work now on these projects at the European level. I saw there are many questions, so I will only very briefly put one thinking which I already put in one answer here in the Q&A section. To be honest, I do not like so much the wording sufficiency because it sounds like yeah, somehow we are lacking important parts in our life. We have created a new term in the Horizon 2020 project, which we call New Trends. That's a New Trends project. And in fact, when you look around, we are increasingly changing our attitudes and our behaviors. Maybe as just questioned by Leah in the slide, is it fast enough? I don't know, but the COVID context has shown us that we can very quickly, if we are aware of the urgency of acting, we can very quickly change our behavior. And I think in that new trends proposal, which is modeling based, you can get some ideas how big the impact of these changed behavior can be. This is a different approach next to the indicator approach, which Leah has presented here. And I'm sure that in the frame of the Odyssey Mir project, sufficiency trends or new trends, generally spoken, will play an increasing role in the coming years. Thank you very much, and I would not like to take too much time away to answer the questions.
Thank you, welcome.